imposed by the Trump administration?
So two things. The MTBs and miscellaneous tariff barriers is not the actual same conversation as the tariff discussion. The MTBs have been going on since 2016 and 2015 and 2014. As a matter of fact, one of the new issues that I faced when I became a Congress member in 2011 was these miscellaneous tariff barriers that are a unique, specific requirement for something that we can't get here, bringing it from somewhere else. There's been a 4.5% tariff on the goods coming in for the TV sets, the electronics element. So the question is not just the current trade and tariff fight, which I've already said I have grave concerns with the ricocheting effect of such an imposition. The MTBs are a little older than this current fight. In the end, however, to the average person in the average place, it doesn't really matter when the fight started. It's having a negative impact on the jobs at Element, and I am certainly one of the champions who wants to find a way over that obstacle. I was in the White House just about 10 days ago, meeting with the president on trade and theft issues around the world, i.e. China and other places who we felt had a negative posture against the United States. And I was there again on Wednesday and have raised concerns specifically with the president as it relates to the tariff strategy. I certainly appreciate the positive impact of his long-term trade posture in a way to try to rebalance the fact that our economy is a very open economy, so we allow folks to bring their goods and services into our country. When we go to those countries, they're not necessarily as welcoming, so you're actually running into headwinds in other countries. Trying to recalibrate and find an equilibrium, a balance in that global system of trade, quite challenging, quite difficult, and companies around our state and around the country are feeling the effect. Most of them, I think, will be okay. There are specific and significant impacts to companies like Element that we hope to be helpful in overcoming those obstacles. I see y'all are shy. This is good. So happy to. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So will you join Congressman Sanford in his opposition to offshore oil off the coast of South Carolina?
So two things. Thank you for another exciting question there. I was saying exciting question. My opinion and position is as public as it gets on offshore drilling, offshore excavation. I think the chances that we can find offshore gas is a real possibility. I have said and continue to say that as long as the coast of South Carolina is universally solidified in opposition to that direction, that I will stand with them. So I believe that there is some actual benefits to going offshore and seeing what's possible. Unfortunately, or fortunately, my constituents disagree with me, and so as a public servant, this is not a legal, ethical, or moral issue. I side with my constituents. Not because I am for market, by the way. He's opposed to it. I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I simply think that if you can't convince your constituents it's in their best interest, it's wise to take a step back from your own position and follow your constituents. So, ma'am.
I said, what a novel idea.
You're the boss, and unless I think of it as a legal, ethical, moral issue, I'm siding with the constituents who elected me to serve them. If I can't convince people that I'm right, I'm going to be wrong until I convince them that I'm right. So I try to just keep it simple. I know you do. I'm going to look for other folks. Any other questions?
I got questions.
She's ready.
Yeah,
and I'm hopeful that you've got some questions. Yes, ma'am. I want you to have all the questions that you want. Yes,
so we've talked a lot about the economy, but I was wondering a little more about foreign policy. So this is a broad question, but what do you think of our relationship with Russia in light of the Helsinki summit? And also, about 10 years ago, last week, or this week, is when Russia invaded Georgia in 2008.
Sure, so that's accurate. About 10 years ago, in 2008, Russia moved in a lot of the soldiers, I think the number was about 80,000 soldiers moved in. They moved in with about 100 military aircraft. The entire Georgia military has about 30 aircraft. so they were overwhelmed immediately. I think there's no question that much can be said, but to be as clear as possible, I would imagine that Putin's objective, especially in Eastern Europe, looks to me to be as much of a reunification effort of the old USSR to the extent that he can possibly make progress. He has done so, unfortunately without very little challenge. So I am not a fan of Russia. I think they are an adversary of our nation. I think China wants to be us. I think Russia wants to replace us. Two very different perspectives. Helsinki doesn't concern me as much as it does perhaps you. The fact of the matter is that having our president speak to leaders of other countries, whether they are friends or adversaries, can be in our best interest, so that doesn't really concern me as much. I have been a part of the legislative team that has pushed through CATSA, which is challenging the adversaries of America through more sanctions. We've included Russia as a part of that apparatus so that we can be as punitive as possible. Challenging the oligarchs is one of the fastest ways to bring in Putin and his friends closer to their knees. It's the fastest path going forward. We have not had a discussion around using kinetic force or using military force. I hope we don't get to that point. There's no doubt that us putting pressure on the economic system, 70% of Russia's economy is driven through energy. So when you are sapping the resources of the oligarchs, you're actually sapping the resources of the entire country. I hope we become even more aggressive with our approach from an energy standpoint on Russia, because it's one of the fastest ways for us to rein in Putin and the regime. Yes, sir.
As a person of color, how do you feel about Mr. Trump always talking about people of color, about their low IQ, they're dumb, they're not intellectual adequate to other folks? How do you feel about that as a person of color?
Well, I will say that, once again, I try to be as clear and as honest as possible. I have not heard the president say anything in that vein at all. Well, I haven't, well, someone read me the tweet so I can hear. Do you have the tweet with you?
But I'll get it to you.
All you gotta do is put in your phone right there. I mean, I'll stop, I'll pause, let you look it up. Anybody can just put in, President Trump's tweets, and it'll pop up what he actually said. I'm happy to respond to that. If that's what he says, that black folks have lower IQs because they're black. I don't see that.
Different individuals who are people of color
Right.
about their low IQ.
He talked about Maxine Waters.
Maxine
He talked
Waters.
about Don Lemon.
That's right.
So,
Okay, he talked about LeBron James.
Yes.
yeah,
Those are specific examples.
And you saw those.
no, that's a very different perspective, and a very different statement than Donald Trump cascading all black folks. When in fact, Maxine Waters has been as aggressive and challenging towards the president as anybody else. Therefore, if President Trump is a counterpuncher, if you hit him, you should expect him to hit you back, whether you're black, white, or red, or yellow. So I don't see that as a racial impact as much as it is a negative statement against Maxine Waters and LeBron James. And I'm not sure what he said about Don Lemon, to be honest with you. But at the end of the day, perhaps the question that is gnawing at you a little bit is the president's aggressive response to situations that some can categorize from a racial perspective. I think there have been times when the president has been, in my opinion, too far of the mainstream of America, which is Charlottesville. The anniversary is this weekend coming up. That's a classic example where I told the president I thought that he and I were on two different pages with the racial history of this country. But the fact is that Maxine Waters has really asked and encouraged people to be as aggressive with the Trump administration, the appointees, and Republicans as conceivably possible. I didn't see that as an African American who happens to be Republican. I didn't see Maxine Waters challenging the philosophical disposition of Republicans. I saw her asking for people to energetically interface with Republicans in a very aggressive way that I think is destructive for the country. So having a response to that situation, I really don't have a problem with it. But I use the same language as the president would. Perhaps not, probably not, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend like what Maxine Waters says or what, I don't know, the LeBron James situation and Don Lemons as well. Those issues are issues I can't answer because I'm not there, but the overall tone and texture of the conversations, it'd be nice to de-escalate, but that's not something that I think I'm going to go into.
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
You may have addressed this already, concerning Element and other companies
Yes.
across the country like Element.
Yes.
Yeah. What would you say the percent chance of getting tariff exemptions for them, and if so, what would be the time? What
Yes.
do you think that's-
So the Element situation is a specific situation, a unique situation, part of a larger situation. So let me tell you what I mean by specific and unique. The deadline to ask for the MTVs was in last year, December 2016. So the requests that were made are working their way through the process for MTVs. MTVs, the miscellaneous tariff barriers, is a different category than the current fight that we're having with NAFTA renegotiations, trying to get the zero barriers in Europe, which I think is an interesting concept, and then the whole China deal. The MTVs are a very unique and specific part of a broader conversation, but it predates, it started before the tariff debate. The next time that Element will have a chance to join in the conversation is really later this year and early next year. What we're looking to do, though, is to try to remove the barriers that we have on companies like Element who can't find what they need in America to be able to get it and bring it in. So MTVs are not the same tariff conversation because it has to do with a unique and specific part of what it is that you need in order to do your job or to finish your product. We have a number of those throughout South Carolina, by the way. The Element really is a part of a bigger, broader conversation that predates this current debate. But yes, I have supported and encouraged us to be able to move forward on MTVs. MTVs got caught up about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, in the whole earmark process. So the problem with MTVs is almost a decade old, whereas the current trade and tariff fight is about 6 months old. So we've been working through that for a long
We have
time.
time for one more.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you. The MTVs represent a 4.5% tariff on the products that Element imports, and that they are able to operate at a break-even small profit under that burden. The new tariffs are 10 to 20%, which basically will, if they continue to operate, they'll go bankrupt.
Hence their suggestion in October,
Yeah,
they will be
they're
cutting it down.
Yeah, if they can't get an exemption on the new tariffs,
Right.
there is no need to continue to pursue the MTB relief because they will in fact be out of business. I think what Element is asking for, and help me if this is possible, is they're asking for an exemption now on the recently enacted tariffs, and these are tariffs on products that aren't you can't access in the U.S. You have to import them from elsewhere. So there's no U.S. job protection or job creation based on that. So if they can continue to import at the current without the tariffs, they'll stay in business and they can continue to fight the MTB.
Two things. You're not wrong. So the first thing is that I'm responding to the letter that Element wrote to my staff, to me, and our response to them was what I just laid out. This was the specific request within the letter that they sent to us around the MTVs. So what I've explained here is the real challenge going back, because it's the challenge that they've articulated, and I think I have a copy of the letter on my device. So that was it, number one. Number two, there is the foreboding of future tariffs, and hence I think their October deadline is that if you can't find relief in this current trade debacle, then they're going to have to shutter their current locations. I gotta go. Their current operations. So I think